Well, tell me, mama, what's going on? Tell me, darling, what's going on? I'm going back.
Welcome back, everybody. Bacon and Egg Show, episode 11, coming to you from a rainy Austin, Texas on June 26th, 2020. We're recording on a Friday today. So that way all you can enjoy this over a full weekend and absorb the Bacon and Egg Show in its full
you'll
hour.
have it ready for you, and you can plan your weekend around it. Like that's what I would do personally. But it's your choice. Whatever you want to do.
Absolutely. We provide the tools. It's up to you what you do with them. So
Exactly.
Jay, how's your week been? I know we're not quite there to the end, but
Yeah, no, it's been pretty good. I just getting through another work week and figuring out how we're going to handle things with all the new developments with COVID, and the governor's come out and made some more changes today, and we're just trying to figure it all out like everybody else. So hopefully we can start to get some answers on this and move forward. But no, man, other than that, week's been good. Just excited for some, actually getting closer to playing sports, hopefully. And yeah, man, so it's been a good week. Everything going good with you?
yeah, same boat. It's riding the wave of COVID.
Nothing else you can do. I mean, it is what it is. We're there. Living in it.
The bars are closed again, but restaurants
do?
are still open to 50%. So, make sense of that, what you will. But
Well,
that math didn't quite add up. But anyway, that's for another show. We'll talk COVID today. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
There'll be plenty of COVID discussion, but yeah, we don't have a Greg Abbott segment in the schedule today or.
That got written out earlier today. Yeah. You wrote that part out, but maybe another time. Yeah.
It's on the cutting room floor before it even got cut. So. Well, let's jump into it, man. Let's get into the cup of coffee here.
Let's do it.
We're kind of getting back into our normal show schedule routine. We've had so many great guests over the last few weeks, but yeah, kind of getting back into the normal routine here a bit. Jay, what do you got in the cup of coffee?
Yeah, and so we've spent quite a bit of time on our show recently talking about the aftermath of the murder of George Floyd and all of the protests and all of the developments that have come from that. Well, NASCAR, really made a statement and came out and banned the Confederate flag from their grounds and races and everything. Well, then this week they NASCAR finds a noose, or a rope fashioned as a noose, hanging from in a garage that belonged to our friend Bubba Wallace, who, if you don't know, is the only black driver on the NASCAR circuit. So finding a noose in the garage specifically for that driver during this time where all of these, NASCAR has banned the Confederate flag, there's so much unrest going on, and it appeared as if somebody was making a statement there. There were 11 garages. Of all of the garages in the thing, there were 11 garages that had pull-down ropes for the garage door, and this happened to be the only one that was fashioned like a noose. The FBI found that it wasn't, through video evidence actually, that it wasn't specifically made, like it was actually from last October apparently, but this is still a problem that this was around for this long and nobody happened to say anything. Nobody saw it and said anything about it. So did you see anything about this, Kerry?
Yeah, a little bit. I guess my takeaway from it is, okay, all right. So we were able to it was determined that like this wasn't specifically targeted at Bubba Wallace for this race, and in this, he's going to be in this garage. Let's hang this rope up, in a targeted manner towards him. Okay, rule that part of it out. For me, that I guess it kind of goes to like the attitude in a way. Like who, for one, okay, so it's a garage pull. Who ties a rope like a noose without it intending to look like a noose? Like, if that was the most effective way to tie a garage pull, wouldn't all the other garages or anything have that kind of stuff? Why was it just one? I think there's a determination to make, like, okay, so if you can rule out that it's not targeted to Bubba Wallace, that's fine. But on the same time, like, can you not also realize that, like, it's not in good taste at all? Like, that shouldn't be there. That maybe someone did that thinking it was, some kind of under the radar joke or dig or something that they could possibly hang up. Like, I, I know we're not going to get an answer on that. And, like, but you can't have that, it's, I don't know. It's interesting to me. I mean, I guess I'm glad that they found that it wasn't like a specifically targeted type thing, but who's hanging
And maybe
that up?
right, and maybe this is just these are more of the relics that NASCAR is working to clean up, the things that are directly associated with their sport, the racism, the all of the things that a lot of people tie to NASCAR with, and I believe rightfully so. They're working to clean this up, and maybe this is the timing of this is just that poor that
Yeah.
during all of this, when they're trying to clean this up, this happens to pop up. I'm not saying, it seems to me like, and Bubba Wallace seems to be okay with the investigation. Like, oh, okay, that's fine. But obviously, the timing of this is just so poor, and it's just another reminder that NASCAR still has a lot of work to do before gaining back any of whatever it is that they had lost. I think they still have a lot of work to do, and this shows it, and they will. I think NASCAR, of any organization, I honestly think NASCAR has done more than in getting at it. Maybe not more, but they've taken bigger steps in terms of where they were previously, I should say,
Yeah.
in my
Yeah. They've been
opinion.
extremely proactive.
Yeah, exactly. And I saw somebody say that NASCAR did more for Bubba Wallace in 2 weeks than the NFL did for Colin Kaepernick in 4 years. And I can't say that they're wrong.
No, it's hard to argue that point. Yeah, they've got a lot of work to do. It's going to be interesting to see kind of how that all plays out.
But the
With little
drivers walking
incidents like
arm in
that. Yeah.
arm and walking behind Bubba Wallace's car, and like there were some powerful images. There were some very powerful statements that have been made directly behind Bubba Wallace in the last couple of weeks, and it makes me believe that NASCAR truly is going to do everything they can to take some steps in the right direction here.
Yeah, and it's pretty interesting to see that reaction. I know, it's different sport, different everything, but, like, you juxtapose that with Drew Brees' reaction to being asked about Black Lives Matter movement, the kneeling, in peaceful protest during the national anthem, and his response that got so much backlash. You look at that versus kind of what the other drivers in NASCAR have been doing, and it's kind of like, it's kind of surprising in a way, right? Like, you would, if anything, you'd expect those reactions coming from NASCAR drivers, like, oh,
Right.
it's
Well, and if they do feel that way, they've done a really nice job of keeping their mouth shut. Like they're on brand, which NASCAR was probably like, guys, we have to all be in this in order to make this work. And if you're not, there will be problems. You have to all be, if you don't want to speak out, don't speak out in terms of supporting this movement, but we're
yeah,
not going to allow you to speak out against it. And I don't know if that's a mandate or if that's actually happened, but it sure seems like everybody's on the same page here with NASCAR, as opposed to a Drew Brees who, we've gone over that on this show plenty, but it just seems like they have their ducks in a row and they've done a nice job. I will give NASCAR credit.
absolutely. Speaking of changes, another thing that we had mentioned on this show before was the call. Kind of the SEC put this out that the state of Mississippi should change their flag, which contains a Confederate flag. So to have the SEC make that kind of call, I believe it. I don't know if it was last week's show, if we discussed this with Mike, kind of the how monumental that is for the SEC to kind of make this call to the state of Mississippi that they won't, host any regionals or any kind of championship events or anything in the state of Mississippi unless it changes. Well, we saw Mike Leach and Lane Kiffin and every other college coach in the state of Mississippi converge on the state capitol to basically call on the Mississippi government to change the flag. So you're starting to see this trickle down, if you will, from not just the SEC, but now it's the coaches at every university in the state showing up to basically call for this. It's going to change, right? Like, how does, at this point, how does the state of Mississippi not make a change to the flag? Do you think it's going to change? And what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you're right. It's at this point, the statements are so strong. They're coming from people in positions of power, and they're going to continue. The voices will continue to shout from the rooftops that this needs to be done until it's done. There will not be a backwards movement on this. Like we've used the phrase on this show a couple of times, the toothpaste is out of the tube.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there will be some things that maybe will, you know, I'm not saying that everybody in this entire country is moving forward, but when it comes to things like this that are so meaningful, so powerful, that represent something so hateful, this, I don't think they will stop until it's changed. And I'm glad that every single one of those college coaches went to that Capitol, spoke out. Very powerful statement, and I think it will get changed.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's one thing to have kind of an outside organization like the SEC tell the state of Mississippi what to do. Oh, well, don't tell us what to do. You know, it's almost sometimes the attitude people towards the federal government or things like that, this outside organization trying to tell us how to live. Well, it's a little different when, and I would imagine, I don't have the numbers here in front of me, the two highest paid state employees
Yeah.
show up to the Capitol and say, no, this needs to change.
Yeah, well, and
that's not from
probably
the outside. Those are two,
right.
and I know they're new coaches, and I know like in that state and everything, but that's different. That's very different.
And that's probably, of all those coaches, out of the top 500 paid state employees, I would guess most of them are in that list. So that carries even more weight. And I was having the same thought as you were bringing up their salary, and that's just another example of how powerful this movement is, how powerful, you know, it's not going, some of this can't go backwards. And that's one of those things. Anything associated with the Confederate flag got to go.
Gotta go.
And it will. It's got to go, and it will. So I applaud those coaches for taking that step for sure.
Well, on a little bit of a different, changing gears here a little bit in the cup of coffee, we got a listener question this week. I don't know if it's so much of a question as much as it was a subject that was brought up, and something that amongst all the COVID, amongst the pandemic and amongst the George Floyd murder and everything has come along after that, a kind of interesting subject, a little more lighter in terms of what are our thoughts and just kind of general discussion about this piped in crowd noise we're seeing on broadcast now. I know this kind of, the German Bundesliga was the first, league to kind of come back in the middle of the pandemic, and they kind of kicked off this whole crowd noise being piped in during the broadcasts on TV. Now we see it in Spanish leagues, and now the Premier League is back and has it. There's discussion of it being used in the NFL. I think we mentioned this weeks ago on one of our shows where the NFL, Fox was talking about how they were already working on their television presentation for NFL games this fall, if there's no fans, and finding a way to implement crowd noise and those kinds of things. This is also kind of a divisive thing. There doesn't seem to be a consensus one way or the other on, do people like the crowd noise in the broadcast? Do people hate it? Where do you fall on this? What are your thoughts on this crowd noise being piped in on TV, and does it add anything for you? What do you think? I
watched those first Bundesliga matches, and I listened to the crowd noise there, and it at first I had a huge dislike of the piped in crowd noise. The more I've been able to watch games on television, the less it bothers me. And actually, it doesn't really bother me at all at this point. I just was like, at first, I was like, why are you trying to fool me? Into, but that's not what it is. It's more like you're just fooling your brain into thinking you're one. Yeah, I get it. I didn't like it at first. I don't mind it now. How do you feel about it?
It's it hasn't bothered me. What I found interesting is kind of um, the difference from network to network. So if you watch the Premier League on NBC, they basically are trying to recreate the noises that come like with the action. So if there's a shot on goal, there's kind of it's almost like someone's there controlling the sound to kind of bring in like where the crowd goes, oh, there's a chance. But there's always kind of a little bit of like a delay to it, so
Opponent hits it. Opponent just skies it over the bar, and you hear, "Hey!"
yeah, like they try to bring it, they try to make it as authentic as possible, which
Yeah.
I appreciate. But also, if your eyes aren't on the screen for a second, and you're kind of depending on that noise to kind of let you know what's happening in the game, you hear something like that and you turn, it was like something that happened like 5 seconds before, and you're like, oh well, that
Yeah.
didn't really work. But the one that I feel like I've liked the best is BN Sports and the La Liga, the Spanish league presentation. They don't, at least seemingly, from what I've been able to watch, they haven't really tried to do all that. Like, if anything, they just have kind of like recorded, you know, chants and general kind of buzzy crowd noise that they've worked into the broadcast. You can still hear the players yelling and everything in the empty stadiums, in the middle of the game. But if anything, it's just kind of like a good background noise. But it's not telling you so much about like what's going on in the game and what's happening. I like it just from the sense of it providing like a bit of a droning background sound, at least during like watching the soccer games. Now, well, American football is going to be a completely different thing if we're going to have to use it. But um, I have to say, like, I'm not against it. I've been, a fairly ambivalent person on it, I guess. And I don't hate it.
Yeah.
Not, but I like having it there. It's a comforting feeling almost.
When I've never played a soccer game in front of more than 10 people. So like when I think of soccer games in empty stadiums, I think of that. I think if you hear the athletes speaking, you hear the coaches yelling, you hear those things. And I think maybe I was disappointed to not be able to be able to be even more a part of that game and a part of that experience because they felt the need to pipe in the crowd noise. Maybe that's why I had such a huge dislike for it at the beginning. But now that it's happened and I agree. Having it on is sort of just like that steady noise in the background the whole time. Just I do like that part of it, and um, yeah, I really am disappointed that that soccer didn't take more of an advantage of miking up the field and just run it on a delay. Have somebody there with a dump button ready to if you hear an MF bomb or a GD or whatever and you
Yeah.
don't want it to get out be ready with the dump button just like any other slightly delayed live broadcast. But I get it. I don't mind it anymore, I guess. But yeah, at first, I hated it. Oh man,
Well, yeah,
I was so against it at first.
it was such a shock to the system, right? Like it was already weird seeing players like walk out to the pitch and like kick off a game in a completely empty stadium with no atmosphere, kind of thing. Because I think that was maybe the first broadcast. I think it was the Borussia Dortmund match. I forget the opponent, but they were the first one back, and they didn't use the piped in crowd noise for it, and it was kind of jarring. Like, this is really kind of weird because it was an empty stadium and you're watching a very meaningful match happen. But yeah, I mean, it provides that like little bit of normalcy to it. It's weird at first when you hear that crowd noise, and then on the broadcast, there's nobody in the stands. It's fake, kind of thing. You're kind of like, do we need this? Like, we know it's fake. You're not fooling anybody. But then you kind of get used to the whole thing and understand why they're trying to do it, it makes a little bit more sense. And I appreciate the effort on it. It's just funny watching the variance in it from network to network, trying to find the best way to make it work.
Trying to make each one of every broadcast, every network's trying to make it their own, trying to put their own twist on it. I mean, I guess that's expected. Some are going to be better than others, but again, I didn't mind, it's sort of, if you have a big meaningful game like that, it's like, oh man, that could be played at the fields over there off the East William Cannon,
Yeah.
like it's just an empty, it's the same thing. And I get, that to me is that's the cool part about that is how rare it is to actually play a game of that meaning without fans, and not because they got banned for being racist or something like that, but because they didn't have to play an empty stadium game for something like that, but more because it's, yeah. But anyways, that was, yeah, I could have given you the short answer like this. I hated it at first. I don't mind it now. I guess that's the long and the short of it.
Well, and I'll ask you one quick question here before
Yeah.
we move on. Is there a sport that you think that this would be most beneficial to for the television experience?
For piped-in crowd noise?
Yeah.
Like,
or I guess I should say, is there a sport that you think that it can be pulled off really, really well and that would actually provide the most to the television viewing experience?
I mean, I think I can only think of the opposite way to answer that question in terms of I think the NBA absolutely does not need crowd noise. I think Major League Baseball does not need crowd noise.
Well, see, that's where it's funny you mentioned that, because I feel like baseball is the one where it can get pulled off the most accurate, where it actually seems like the best representation.
I think it would be the easiest to pull off.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, that makes sense. I just also, I think maybe for that reason, that might be why I don't think they need it, because it's just.
That might be true. Yeah.
But either way, I think you're right though. I think baseball would have the easiest time, but basketball for me, I hope they still have the DJs. I hope they're still playing music. That's a part of it.
See, that's what they should do. That's what they should do. And I feel like the NHL will be difficult to import the crowd noise into as well, with how quickly the game changes on a second to second basis, where how can you manipulate the crowd noise to try to make it seem like there's a real live crowd in a hockey arena.
Right. Still, please give me the organ player, but I don't need the crowd noise.
Exactly. Baseball, yeah. I feel like you got a big pitch coming up here to maybe get a strikeout. You can get the crowd noise built up. You think about Altuve hitting that walk-off in the ALCS. Well, as soon as you hear the crack of that bat, fire up the crowd noise. So
imagine what that would have sounded like with no people in the stands. Like a moment of that magnitude, and man, listening to that and listening to, whether even if it was Joe Buck, just.
Well, it would have been easier to hear the trash can banging.
Yeah. Oh, it's funny because it's true.
And yes, I am an Astros fan.
Yeah,
diehard Astros fans. For those wondering that are watching this, if you can't laugh at yourself and you can't make fun of yourself, then what's the point?
If you guys need proof of that flag or that towel up there in that frame, that's from Game 3 of the 2017 World Series that Kerry snagged. That if you needed proof of the fandom, we acknowledge the shortcomings of our favorite franchise, however, are not apologizing for winning a World Series. I think that's where we.
Oh no, and we'll definitely be getting more into that once MLB decides to release those documents on the Yankees cheating scandal. Yeah, that'll be coming in further episodes, or not. Maybe they'll just completely keep that under wraps.
Go away because it's the Yankees.
Yeah. So, well, we appreciate that question, that subject being submitted. I think it's a fascinating thing, and I think the more that, especially next month, which the perfect kind of segue here as we get into the pandemic talk, as we start to see more of these sports open back up and restart, how those are broadcasted and how that works. So perfect opportunity there. Let's transition over into the pandemic talk, Pandemic Weekly. The big
it gets me every time, man. I'm sorry.
We're still here. It's
Yeah.
not going away.
Yeah.
It's like pandemic daily, but the NFL had a little bit of news this week regarding the pandemic. Jay, you want to kind of hit on that some?
Yeah,
I think you followed that. I think you were more in tune with that quite closer than I was. The news that came down. So
the NFL was the Hall of Fame game. The committee behind that, the people that put that together, were very adamant. We're going to show everybody how it's done. We're ready to play. We're going to play. Well, along with the enshrinement ceremony this year, the Hall of Fame game has also been canceled. That's, for those of you unfamiliar, it's the first game of the preseason every year. It kicks off the preseason for the NFL, and it's always around the same weekend as the Hall of Fame induction ceremony. So that's the first cancellation that the NFL has made since deciding that they were going to set this in place to come back. Does that worry you? Does that surprise you? I mean, or does that make you think that we're that much less likely to have a season?
yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't say it's surprising,
No.
but in terms of concern for there being an NFL season, absolutely. I did see in addition to that, they moved the Hall of Fame induction ceremony for the 2020 inductees to 2021. So they're not delaying it a month. They're not going to do it during the season. They just flat moved it to 2021. So they're going to induct the 21 and 20 inductees next year. So for me, that says a lot. Canton, Ohio depends on that for a decent bit of tourism money and all that kind of stuff. It's the same thing, Baseball Hall of Fame, all that, NHL is a little bit different. That's in Toronto. They're doing okay. They don't need the tourism money from just the Hockey Hall of Fame. But like that's a big deal for Canton, Ohio. It's a huge deal. So for them to not only cancel the game, postpone the inductions for another year, and not even, we're recording this June 26th, to not even entertain the option of maybe playing the Hall of Fame game, which was going to be the Cowboys and Steelers behind closed doors. That, to me, that says a lot. Now, you can argue maybe that's a little maybe overcautious, but I think it's definitely something to be concerned about in terms of the NFL season, for one, starting, and two, starting on time.
Well, and I applaud whether it's authorities in Canton, Ohio, or for the state of Ohio, or whoever it was that sort of decided, you know what, we don't want people coming into the state, especially from Texas. Like Texas is on that short list of states that other states aren't allowing to come in. If you're from Texas, you can't go to New York or wherever. So, but I applaud the authorities who were able to figure out, okay, we don't need to bring any more. That's less than 2 months away. It's a month and a half away, basically. And they got out in front of this. I think it's a smart decision. It's not surprising, like you said, but it is it is that first. Okay,
it's the first domino to fall.
Exactly.
It's the first, and that's what. Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't even think about the out-of-state traveling. That's not that long of a trip for Steeler fans from Pittsburgh to go for that game, but the fans of America's team will be trucking and hauling into Canton from all over the country, and that's probably not the,
Cowboys fans always travel very well.
Well, Steeler fans too. I mean, to be honest, if you talk about two well entrenched franchises and all over the country, it's hard to get much bigger than those two.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be fascinating to see. Anything else going on this week in the NFL in terms of pandemic stuff? I know there's on that note about preseason, talking about reducing the preseason in general, right?
Yeah, the league was having talks about just either reducing the number of preseason games or canceling the preseason altogether. Which, if you're trying to make a team, that's tough, but it's very understandable that they would try to consider that. Basically, to me, all that means is they're pushing out games as long as possible. They're pushing out having to start games as long as possible to try to get over this and see where it's going. They're buying themselves time. However, in terms of forming your rosters, I think, hey, it might be smart just to consider doing this now, getting out in front of it and letting, so in terms of evaluating your players, what it's going to take to form a roster. So
Yeah.
that was pretty interesting to know that not only, and it was about the same time that the Hall of Fame game cancellation was announced, that this came out, that the league was considering this. So I mean, I think it's definitely something they should consider.
Yeah, and we'll watch how this develops over the coming weeks, and I'm sure we'll be able to dive a little bit deeper into what that actually means for a football season if they only
Yeah.
go, hey, we're going to go one preseason game, one warm up before things get real, and how does that affect injuries? How does that affect roster spots? That's as this thing develops, we'll definitely get deeper into that. Um, Training camp's supposed to start on time still, right? I haven't heard any news arguing
Yep.
the other.
Everything's supposed to start on time. I mean, they're saying right now that they're on schedule, whatever that means. Like, I don't understand how do you're on schedule for what? Because you can look at a calendar. You don't know, like, unless you're looking at these. If you're looking at numbers dropping and you think, okay, if we can consistently follow this trend, that yeah, we will start on time. But I don't know how you can. I mean, we're planning on starting our season. We're planning on starting training camp on time. We're planning on starting our season on time. Well, yeah, a lot of people had a lot of plans that were shifted around because of this pandemic. So, I mean, it's tough for me to. They're going to start their their training camp on time. Well, is it all still going to be virtual? I mean, are you going to be able to get groups of 10 together, position groups, to actually come together in person? Is everything? It's just an empty statement to me, and they're buying their time, and I don't blame them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, of course they want to start on time, but also if you're going to cut 3 weeks out of the preseason, why do you need to start camp the time that it usually starts?
Exactly.
Push it back 3 weeks if that's the idea, but it's so I've got a little guest joining me today due to the rain.
Oh, hey.
Kind of try to keep this guy under control over here for those that there he is. All right. But yeah, so we'll definitely keep an eye on the NFL thing going forward. I'm sure in the next week or two there's going to be more news. I mean, especially with the Hall of Fame game thing dropping and that news kind of coming out. But we also had some news about Major League Baseball this week. Pretty big development since our last show. It sounds like we're going to have baseball.
Yeah. Question mark? Or will maybe?
Well, at least they reached an agreement, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The 60 games. 60-game season is what was agreed upon. They're going to play, which the players kept saying, "Tell us when and where." And now finally they're telling them, "Okay, we're gonna." They say they have July 23rd or 24th, I believe, were the two scheduled start dates. That they were still tossing those two dates around to see what was going to work. There isn't an actual schedule made, but I believe they have an idea of what teams will play each other. So it's just nice to know that at least in that regard, they've taken the steps necessary to start their season.
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking about that as well in terms of schedule, and scheduling and travel and all those things. We're not talking about a hub city kind of situation or hub location like we've talked about with the NHL and the NBA plans. Like it sounds like like the Astros will be playing at home for their home games, and then they're going to travel to wherever to play their road games. How far are they going to be required to travel? How often? What's there's a lot of questions that I think they're going to answer them, but that are interesting, especially in a condensed 60 game season. How much of that is going to be dedicated? The Astros playing the AL West. How much of their 60 game season is going to be them out on a West Coast road trip in Seattle, Oakland, and Anaheim? How much time is that going to be dedicated for that versus, maybe playing more games in Arlington, the big feed store that they just opened up there, that nice aluminum siding
that
building.
auction barn.
Yeah. The memes on that have been
grill.
just tremendous. Yeah, that charbroil gas grill, but like, is it worth, would they be better off just playing like in Arlington and Kansas City and kind of keeping within, relative distance. And that's what I think is going to be interesting, which means, are they not going to be playing their division opponents as much? Are they going to be playing more, I guess, properly geographically located, teams? It's going to be interesting to see. But again, that's kind of based on the premise of, like, are we going to have a season
Right.
with the upswing in coronavirus cases, and what are we looking at?
What makes me think that it's a geographical thing is because we've heard that the Astros and the Dodgers will play each other this year. So the West Coast thing is really a great point because they'll have to travel less. I bet they'll play the Padres too. They're already traveling out to the West Coast, so it makes me feel like they're going to just make that, if they are traveling, if it's for whatever, if they're playing every one of those teams 10 times and then they play the Rangers 10 times, who else? That's their 60 games right there. If you play the Mariners, the A's, the Rangers, the Dodgers, and the Padres. Did I miss
The
somebody in the division?
Angels.
Oh, the Angels. Okay, so maybe that would be it. So maybe it nix the Padres and they play the Angels, right? So I mean, you got that to me makes the most sense. But
It is interesting.
Again,
I'm curious how much they're going to kind of encourage that interleague, especially with the DH situation being what it is. I mean,
right.
do they basically just say you're going to split your season between the AL and the NL West? So
Yeah.
Throw in the Diamondbacks, throw in the Rockies, throw in the Giants. There you go. You'll play your division more, your actual division more, but you're also going to play these NL West teams to kind of for competitive balance or something like that.
Yeah,
That would make some sense.
Yeah, just in terms of the geographical stuff, and
yeah,
it does make the most sense. But we'll see. I'm just happy that they've taken the next step. They've really made a mess of this. They had an opportunity to set an example, and the league. I mean, whether you blame the league or the players, they made a mess of this from the start, and I'm just happy
Yes.
that they're moving in the right direction here.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll kind of see again how this develops. I know that there was talk about potentially the Astros allowing people into the stadium for home games. I don't think that's going to happen now, especially with the executive order that came from the governor of Texas today about limiting group gatherings and those kinds of things. Right. So, but again, local jurisdictions can determine the size of crowds or whatever. It's like, okay, we'll see. So long way to go on that front.
Can decide the size of a crowd, but they won't let you tell them that they have to wear a mask. That's okay. I'll stop now.
Well, yeah, we'll change gears on that. Maybe we will have our Greg Abbott segment.
No, we're not.
No, we're not.
Can't do it.
No. All right. So changing gears a little bit. Big news out of England yesterday. The Premier League title was determined. Liverpool first division championship in 30 years. They're now one championship behind Manchester United for the all-time first division count. It's amazing a club of that stature that it's been 30 years since they've won the league. So congratulations to them. There's not a lot of argument that they were the best team this year. I mean, 20-something points, past Manchester City with 7 games or so to go. Hard to argue.
Lots of records are within their reach in terms, including like total most wins in a season, most points in a season. They're going to get dangerously close to, and will probably pass a lot of those records that are more. They were set very recently by Manchester City, and then a team like Liverpool comes in and has a season like this. We said a long time ago, it feels like a long time ago, it was 6 or 7 weeks ago on our show, that if you were going to end the season, it was no question who the champion of the Premier League should be. It was obviously Liverpool was the best team for the whole run of it, and now they've just made it official. So congrats to them. It's a very dominating way to go about it. What did you say? There are 7 games left, and they've clinched the league.
Yeah, I mean they've to give it let me to give it some perspective real quick. I just want just these number. I just want to pull these up because these numbers are just pretty staggering. Um, bear with me here for just a second. I'm just pulling up the table.
You know, watching that game yesterday too, the Chelsea Manchester City game, that's what clinched it for Liverpool. They didn't actually win to it. They now, by just the nature of how far they are ahead, how many points they have, they've clinched. But that was quite a game yesterday too to watch. Pulisic had a nice goal in that game, and those are two teams that are playing very well at this point in the season.
Yeah, so looking at the table here, Liverpool, as we just discussed, clinched the championship. They're sitting at 86 points with 7 games left to go in the league. They are 23 points ahead of Manchester City, who's in second. To give a little perspective here, Arsenal, who are sitting in ninth, have 43 points on the season. That
Kerry,
is exactly half.
how do you earn points? Sorry, go ahead. I apologize.
So just how you earn points for those that aren't aware, you get 3 points for a win, 1 point for a draw, 0 for a loss. So
okay, I'm sorry for cutting you off. You were saying
no, you're fine. No, thank you for bringing that up for those that weren't aware. So Liverpool have played 31, they've won 28, drawn 2, and lost 1 game. So the only solace that us Arsenal fans can take in this is that they didn't go undefeated, and the Invincibles are still the Invincibles, the Arsenal team that did go undefeated. Feels like 50 years ago, but yeah. So just to tell you how dominant they are, I mean that Arsenal are sitting at half of the points that Liverpool are at, and they still have 7 games left to play, so they could really easily shatter that 100-point mark. I mean, we'll see. They might take, especially now that the title's locked up, and coronavirus, all those things. It wouldn't surprise me if they took the foot off the gas and kind of focused on, just kind of keeping healthy and getting ready for the next league session. But
good time to get some youth on the field, get them some first team experience. If there's some players in your system that you're wanting to get on the pitch and play some high quality opponents, this is a good time for Liverpool to be able to do that. I think that's a good point. I didn't think about that. They're obviously very capable of breaking those records, but you're right that's probably it might be a good time to just take the foot off the gas and get some guys some playing time. Maybe some guys that are looking to achieve some personal goals, get them out there and try some new things. Whatever, you've won the league already.
Yeah, get out there and
it might mean more than that.
Hit some contract quotas, try to get some bonuses.
Exactly.
Things like that.
Exactly.
Yeah, so dominant win for them. Like you said, it was kind of an climactic way for them to win it with Chelsea beating City yesterday. But nonetheless, dominant season under weird circumstances where they're not in a stadium with fans. But well, Jay, what do you think? We can break it here. Do you want to continue on through? We got some more pandemic stuff to discuss. We're back coming up a little bit later. What do you think?
Man, why don't we just roll through today and I think we can get through this and finish up strong here with a few more segments here.
Yeah, let's do it. So kind of switching back into the pandemic stuff here, the NHL, just a quick update on that. They've been continuously narrowing down the cities for the hub city. As we mentioned before on the show, the NHL was looking to go to kind of 2 hub cities, one out west, one out east, to continue the season and finish the season starting in hopefully August. I think they were shooting for July 10th to open training camps back up, but to kind of pick up and finish that season later. They're still narrowing down those. The last I saw, I think they were down about 6 cities. I think Vegas is still the favorite for the Western hub, and we'll see. I think they're really wanting to have one in Canada, but that makes things a little bit more complicated when it's a country that's a little more locked down and taking the virus a little more seriously than the one to the south of them. So we'll see how that plays out, but otherwise no other real updates there. Jay, what's been going on with the NBA? Oh, I got you on mute.
Sorry about that. I
There
was
we go.
taking a drink earlier. Didn't want to. Thanks for the heads up, man. We've been on this for a little bit now. About we figured Disney would be the best spot for them to be able to do this. They're at Disney World in Florida. Obviously, Florida is like Texas when it comes to people maybe not taking this as seriously as they need to, and the cases spiking in Florida as well. So there's players that are opting out, man. Whether they are on teams that, maybe they just don't feel like they have a shot to compete, whether they're coming up, they're in a contract year and they don't want to risk going out and something happening and getting sick and not being able to sign that big contract in the off season. I mean, it's a real concern for some players. We talked about Kyrie Irving having that call, and then some of the other stars were like, well, man, actually we're going to play. So, but there seems to be more people than I even thought that were siding with Kyrie, that were just like, you know what, man, like maybe we shouldn't be doing this at all. So it's just been interesting to see these players all come out and develop. They've tested everybody. There were a decent. What's the number of positive tests?
Yeah, that came out this morning. It was 16 positive cases out of 302, which is interesting to me. I saw something related to this that I don't have the exact math here, but that I think it's about a 5% positive test rate out of that, which is interesting because the general public is mostly getting tested, like if they're symptomatic or if, whatever circumstances it may be, contact with somebody that was positive. And I think that's clocking in at about a 7% positive rate in general. Again, I might have these numbers wrong. I don't have them in front of me, but to kind of test the entire NBA population and still come out at about a 5% positive rate is pretty interesting, because we're not talking about people, players that are showing up like, hey, I'm symptomatic.
Right.
So kind of a fascinating,
and
experiment there, I guess.
302 people, when you think about it in terms of a sample size, it's a decent chunk, but it definitely lends to that mindset of, this is about that percentage being so close to the national number of positive tests. I think it just backs up a lot of what we've been saying, and what people in the field of medicine have been saying, people in the field of science have been saying, like, this is spreading, this is all happening at the same rate everywhere, no matter where you are, and we all need to be taking these precautions. So it's a great point, Kerry. I think it does it's a very interesting experiment, I guess, and the sample size of this, it backs up even the larger America.
Yeah. We're talking about world-class athletes, that aren't necessarily at risk. And so to connect that kind of with these players opting out, you have like Avery Bradley, Texas X Avery Bradley, who has opted out. He's not going to play because of the concern of his child that has apparently a kind of a lung condition, a respiratory condition, and doesn't want to risk passing that on. And so, yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, for sure, man. I mean, and they have this now, the with the bubble, they have this plan now for the families to be able to enter the bubble, and it's a 3-day quarantine before entering, and then a 4-day quarantine after entering, before they're allowed to sort of go in. And I think, I don't know, how are they going to enforce this, man? Like, I mean, this is, I hope that people will do what they need to do and take care of their business, but as we've seen, some people can't be trusted with that. So I no longer give anybody the benefit of the doubt with this, because we've just seen what happens. So I don't know, man. This is it's another one that they have dates set. They're leading towards their season starting, and as things continue to unravel with this pandemic, it's getting harder and harder for me to believe that they're going to be able to pull this off.
Agreed. on all the sport fronts
Right.
there. I think all these ones we're discussing, it's getting closer and closer to decision making time. It's um, you know, harder to see it being, a full go.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. I mean, I saw somebody wrote an article and it was basically saying like, you know how we could save college football this year? Let's move it to the spring. And it's like, well, how much can you move things around before you just have to say, look, we have to chalk this up as a loss? Like how many, at what point do you just have to say like, this isn't going to happen this time around?
yeah, and we've had this discussion, kind of away from the show here about, that this is a different, it's the college athletics thing, and we can save this for the We're Back segment if you want to get into it there.
Yeah.
Totally up to you. What do you think? You want to go ahead and jump right into that?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Okay. We don't have the Longhorn insider Mike Holland with us this week, but it's time for some We're Back.
But guess what? We're back.
So, well, I guess we got to start with the question: Is Texas back this week?
Are there any? I think that this team has really come together in this time, and I think maybe they're a little bit more back this week than they were the last time we had a We're Back segment.
Will
I think they're
Texas be
definitely
back
a
this
little more
fall?
Yeah, that's a better question.
To connect it with what we were just discussing about moving college football to the spring, will there be a fall football season? All these things, but so to kind of bring back what I was going to hit on a second ago.
Yeah.
College athletics is a completely different animal when we're talking about restarting or starting in general. We're not talking about 32 NFL franchises that are paid employees that they can come forth and the league can say, you're going to be locked down in this bubble in this city or your home city, wherever it is, and you're going to be getting tested every day or every other day. And then you got to show up to the facility and go through these protocols and you're going to play and you're going to do all this. You can't do that with college athletes. These are students. They're not paid. They're not, you can't, and you have nearly 120 programs around the country that are all on different wavelengths in terms of how they're handling the virus. We've had players here in Austin test positive that have gone into isolation. You had the story come out of Baton Rouge of the LSU, but I think it was 25 players or something like that for LSU that were positive because they went out to a nightclub. They're college kids.
Yep.
Like, what do you do if there's no on-campus classes, which is that's a different subject. But if there's no on-campus classes, they say, well, you can't do this, you can't do that. You have to live in this bubble so you can go play on Saturday in an empty stadium, but you're not paid, by the way. And if you opt out, like,
Yeah.
like how is this going to work?
I don't think you. Yeah. What if you opt out? What if Sam Ellinger decides, which he wouldn't, but I don't think he would. But what if he just wakes up one morning and he's like, man, you know what? I can't put myself into this situation. I have a career in the NFL to think about after this year. I'm opting out of this year. Like, okay, like what how are you going to handle that? How are you going to are you going to take a risk that these players that have this big future in front of them that know they're going to get drafted next year? What's your product going to look like? What kind of product are you going to put on the field if these first round, second round picks? I know there'll still be a lot of athletes on the field that will still make plays, but like I don't know how you're going to handle that.
Well, and it's interesting, kind of, we've seen in a way a preview of what options there might be with what happened with college baseball and basketball this year, where college baseball season, there wasn't a rescheduling. Oh, we're going to push this out to the fall or, push it out anyway. No, it was like, it's done. The season's over. And if you're a senior that was out of eligibility, this was your last season of eligibility, guess what? You get an extra year. You can come back. Is that what we're looking at?
I mean, I don't know if.
Do coaches want that?
Yeah, I don't think they do. I think when you're talking about scholarships, there would have to be rules that by the NCAA where the scholarship limit would have to be changed. You're offering these guys, you're bringing in your next class of recruits, and then all of a sudden you've got 5 guys from your senior class that decide, no, I want to stick around campus for another year. I don't think college football wants that. I don't think college coaches want. I mean, they may want 90 scholarship players instead of 85 or whatever the number is. Who knows? But I don't think that in terms of developing their program, I don't think that anybody really wins there in football. But it's interesting. It's just we can guess. All we're doing, all anybody's doing right now is guessing. You know, we can say how we feel this is going to happen or what might happen or how it should happen. But even, you know, this is just such a difficult thing. And these athletes are trying to make these decisions that can affect the rest of their lives right now at this point. So NCAA is going to have a difficult time corralling this and getting it going. It's just, I don't know, man. It's just like I said earlier, with the NFL, well, and you've said before this, you specifically said you think the NFL is more likely to happen because you can control the bubble. And I
as much
agree
as they
with you.
can, as much as they
Right.
can control it.
And I
But
agree
they at
with
least
you
have a
there.
sense of control.
So, I mean, I'm getting closer and closer to not thinking college football is happening this year.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's unless there's some kind of miracle that happens, but I just don't see that being the case, and in terms of the virus. So that's why it's like, just, yeah, it's just, I almost feel like you said, just cancel it, just call it. There just won't be a college football season. Wear your mask, people.
Yeah, no kidding.
If you
Put
want,
it on over your nose too.
yeah, if you want football this season, wear a mask. But
That might work. That campaign might actually work.
Huh.
How come we haven't done that yet?
Well, I mean, I don't know. We're so
Nick
close.
Saban,
Restaurants were open 50%,
Yeah. Nick Saban came out and there was a very powerful message, and I'm glad he's chosen to speak up and be out in front of this for his state and for his program. So you have powerful people like that, and Nick Saban, if he ran for governor in Alabama, he'd win. So people will listen to what Nick Saban tells them, I think. So yeah, we need more of that. I shouldn't say we haven't done it at all. There hasn't been anybody saying that, or at least hinting at that. Like, guys, we really need you to take care of this so we can play football. But there needs to be more of that from even more of these coaches. And I think there will be, because they're going to start to realize, oh, man.
Nobody else is stepping up.
Right.
We're relying on football coaches to be leaders of society.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately,
world.
that's sort of – it took the NBA having positive cases for this country to shut down to begin with. It took a professional sport for anybody in this country to legitimately start taking this seriously. So, I mean, if that's the way we got to go about it, let's do it. I mean, get them all out in front of – have a big conference, put it on NBC, whatever, put it on free television, and have every football coach in the country at some point tell you to wear a mask. Just do it.
If that's what
what
gets
we
the
gotta
job
do.
done. Oh man. Well, any other news we got from the 40 acres? Let's see what we got going on. Anthony Cook, we had mentioned this before.
Yeah.
Not long after Brennan Eagles released his statement about, not wanting to play anymore if things don't change in a societal manner. It was a couple days later, I think, that Anthony Cook, sent out a statement saying that he won't be playing for Texas anymore. I think a lot of people connected it kind of with the George Floyd situation and everything that started to happen on campus as Anthony Cook wanting to leave for that. I've heard that it's a depth chart issue, that he's officially entered into the transfer portal. He's heading out, but that this had nothing to do with really any of the social factors going on around campus, and that he was just purely saw that he wasn't going to be a starter. And so he's heading to somewhere, we don't know yet, but we'll head somewhere where he can hopefully be a starter, and good luck to him.
Yeah. I mean,
it happens.
The business decision. If
Yeah.
whether he was outworked, whether the guy that came in behind him is just a better player, whatever that may be. Yeah, if he wants a chance to start somewhere else and go and improve and he knows that maybe he knows he's going to need playing time to get to where he wants to be. And if it's not going to be at Texas, then, good luck, man. I hope he does well for himself. And people when these kids transfer, I don't understand people that have ill will towards these ball players that leave the school. It's a business decision. It's a life decision that they're making. And they want to play ball, or they want to be closer to home, or they want to play in this system, or what. I don't fault these kids for doing that, man. It's a part of it.
Yeah, if you're not going to if you want to make it to the next level, you have to be noticed. And if you're not going to get noticed where you are, then go somewhere different. Like it's people change jobs all the time. We don't hear the same,
Right.
oh, he should have just stayed and he's, must be a quitter or something like that. It's like, no, they're doing what's best for them and their families. So
yeah, exactly. No doubt about it, man.
Good luck to them.
Yeah.
What else we got going on? What else, Jay, you got anything news from campus or?
Oh no, I saw that Brian Jones, who played linebacker for University of Texas, last person to wear number 60 for an entire season. And he's also now a heavy contributor for CBS Sports. You'll see him on the broadcast on Saturday mornings during the college football season and over a lot of their other broadcasts too. He came out and said he had something that he wanted to. He wrote an article about the Eyes of Texas. So all the talk about the origin of the Eyes of Texas and where it was performed, and there's been a lot of talk about that. And he came out and said that this might be a great opportunity for the players to sort of take those lyrics and really repurpose the meaning behind them. So, I mean, when we talk about the eyes of Texas are upon you, make it mean like the eyes of Texas are, we're watching to make sure that you're doing everything you can to be a good Longhorn, a good person, and treat everybody equally. That sort of thing. Make those lyrics really mean something positive and turn it around into something good. So I thought it was an interesting thing. He calls into the local radio station around here and contributes a lot still. He actually was on local radio when he was getting started in media. But, I thought it was a really interesting take from him, and it's something that I hadn't really thought about.
Yeah, and it adds to what we've mentioned before about this is going to be a process. It's if any of the players or any of the students or athletes or whoever on campus that were a part of the list of requests and the demands or whatever you want to call it, expected that to be any of these things. Well, we've discussed the whole statue and renaming thing. You can get that done quick, but the Eyes of Texas deal to be a quick kind of change, that was never going to be the case.
Right.
That's going to be a process. There's going to be a lot of discussions and a lot of those opinions, like Brian Jones and I think Rod Babers even had similar ideas about like, we'll just repurpose some of the lyrics. Let's make this. Let's take this as an opportunity, like you said, and like Brian Jones just said. Let's make this an opportunity to make it what it should be, instead of just erasing it. It's an opportunity to repurpose it. It's gonna be fascinating. Whoa, excuse me.
Hey, Kerry.
Whoa, a little dry throat there.
What was the, so I mentioned that Brian Jones was the last person to wear number 60 at the University of Texas. And that's significant for those not familiar with the history of the Texas football program. Number 60 was worn by Tommy Nobis, who was one of the greatest linebackers, one of the greatest defensive players ever to come through the university, and went on to have a really nice pro career as well. So that number is a big deal, and Brian Jones was the last player to wear it full time. So that's why I mentioned that earlier.
No, that's huge. Yeah, and for those unaware, like the number 60 has been one that, good grief. God, I'm getting choked up there.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Tommy Nobis is it's a beautiful thing to talk about.
It is,
Tommy
man.
Nobis.
I get emotional talking about that, but it's what was it? I think, there's kind of this tradition of, a linebacker, defensive end or something like that towards the end of their career, if they've been productive. Like I remember Derek Johnson got to, he wore number 60 for his last home game. Didn't Hager a couple years ago wear it for his last home game or something like that? Or he wore it for a game?
Did he really? I don't remember that. I've
Something
blocked
like
out
that.
so
I
many
don't
of those
know.
years.
Yeah, I know. It just feels like a big blur. He could have worn it his whole career, and I probably wouldn't have noticed. But
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, I think actually he probably did. And yeah, no, it's like it's just one of those special things where I think it's a cool thing when there's
yeah.
paying tribute to the history of the program, and it obviously means a great deal to them to do that. So yeah, I thought it was cool. I think that's cool when they do that.
Well, let's see here. Well, I think it's about time for the breakfast wrap. Let's wrap this thing up. What you think?
Let's do it, man. Kerry, I know you were telling me that there was some stuff with Austin FC. We mentioned that last week. Let's hit on that now.
Yeah,
What's going on with
yeah.
Austin FC?
So as we get closer to kickoff 2021 for the one of the new our first full professional big league team here in Austin with Austin FC. Um, Obviously the team hasn't been assembled yet, but it's getting closer and closer to time to where the foundations will start being set with that team, and we can start kind of talking about that. You're starting to hear some rumors about some designated players, which in MLS, for those that aren't aware, each team has a certain amount of designated player spots that don't hit into their kind of salary structure, if you will. So that enables someone like the LA Galaxy to sign a David Beckham, or you know any of these big stars that have kind of eventually made their way to MLS.
Ibrahimovic.
Yeah, exactly. So using those designated player spots. Um, and so there's been some rumors going around, and Jay, I just want to kind of get a feel from you over if any of these move the needle for you. Obviously, like Beckham's kind of the gold standard of, MLS, talk about moving the needle in terms of getting people that weren't interested.
Definitely.
So a couple of names, I'll throw a couple names out here. You let me know what you think. The one that I've heard that is probably the most, that seems to have the most traction is defender Hector Moreno. He's 32. He's made over 100 appearances for the Mexico national team, and he's played for some fairly big clubs in Europe. PSV, Roma, a few of these. But anyway, he's seems to be out of contract. He started following Austin FC on Twitter. There's been some kind of
I love
discussion
social
about,
media for that. I mean,
yeah,
I hate
yeah,
it, but I love it.
the little rumors and everything. He's done some interviews, you know, talking about potentially coming to play in MLS and those things. So people are starting to connect the dots a little bit that he could be kind of the first one. Does that move the needle for you at all? Is that something? I mean, the experience and the age seems about right. But is that
Yeah,
going to sell shirts?
I don't know. I don't know that he'll sell shirts. I think somebody that you might bring up in a little bit will sell shirts. But I think in terms of forming the core of your team and starting on that back line with Moreno, I think that I don't know if it'll move the needle, but I truly feel like that's a great first step for an Austin FC franchise to really get the ball rolling on forming their roster.
Yeah, I agree. That's again 100 plus appearances for the Mexican national team, and at 32, not quite over the hill yet, but that's a
Yeah,
good kind of rock solid foundation to start building from.
I mean, most of these players that have any experience in foreign leagues, by the time they make it to MLS, this is about right. It's 32, 33. You're looking at the players on the sort of on the downside of their career, but then they come to MLS and it's sort of like they have this life breathed
Yeah.
into them, for whatever reason. But no, I don't know that it'll move the needle in terms of, oh wow, that's what a signing, like that's a big name. But I do think that that's a great start for the franchise.
So the next one that I've heard is this is going to be a more familiar name for those that kind of follow the European soccer scene, but Edinson Cavani, that he's 33, played for Uruguay, and he's the all-time PSG goal scorer, which was interesting for a club that's had some pretty big names. he's kind of a big name. I mean, this is a guy that
Yep.
partners with Luis Suarez on the Uruguayan national team, played in multiple World Cups. Like that's a pretty big. He's a striker, so you talk about goal scoring and bringing some flair and some excitement. Is this one that would move the needle for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that a little bit more so than Moreno. It's just, I think when you talk about where you want to start your team, who do you want to build around, and if you can build around a defender and a striker, and then go from there, people that you can trust, that have played in big games, the young players around them on the team can soak in stuff from them. I don't know as much about either one of them, like in terms of how their leadership abilities, but when you have players of that caliber on your team that have been there before, you at least have that experience there, and can hopefully pull from that with your younger players. So, but Cavani does move the needle quite a bit more for me, and I think that would be a great sign.
Yeah, I've heard he's absolutely, basically he is going to come to MLS, but I think what I've heard is that Inter Miami, the club owned by David Beckham, is the favorite and seems to be where he may end up. So have to say that wouldn't be incredibly shocking. But
Right.
that's a name that's been out there a little bit. The last one I wanted to bring up, this one was kind of a little bit under the radar, but it's a goalkeeper. It's a Guillermo Ochoa, who's currently with Club America, Memo Ochoa. And this one's fascinating because he might be the biggest name and superstar in Mexico, from that Mexican national team.
Yep.
We've all seen him in the World Cups, perform great in the World Cups, big curly hair. Like you see him on advertisements, you see it, he's all over the place.
All over.
He's a superstar.
Yep.
I know he's with Club America, the biggest club in Mexico, but there's been talk, and I won't reveal too many of my sources here, but some people that have really close connections to the ownership,
Excellent.
of Austin FC, that have basically said that the deal's in the bag, that his contract will be up after this coming season, and that you want to make a splash signing and, attract some fans south of the border, this is how you're going to do it. And this one, I think I can speak, I think would definitely move the needle. It'd be a huge signing. He's a superstar. Now I know he's 34, but when we talk about a goalkeeper,
yeah,
you get plenty more mileage out of that than you would if you were a defender or midfielder or anything like that.
This would be the ultimate get in this market, in this league, for Austin FC to get Memo Ochoa I think that's the biggest get that they could get, for lack of a better way to put it. I think that would be, in terms of selling shirts, in terms of advertising, in terms of becoming a team that people in Mexico will follow, all of that stuff. Ochoa the guys, like you said, the first thing I think of when I think of Ochoa are the advertisements that he's in.
Yeah.
And he's all over the place. He's so recognizable. Everybody knows who that cat is.
Even if you don't know who he is, you've seen him.
You've seen him, right?
You know who he is.
Exactly. You might not know his name, but you know who he is. And that would be the biggest needle mover of the three that you mentioned. And that's the one that I hope the most that they actually are able to come through with. I think that would be a great move for them. And I hope the sources are correct.
I hope so too. I think that would just be talk about getting off on the right foot. But as we see, we're getting up on those times where, what this is going to start coming clearer into the picture, and we'll get some more Austin FC talk as we get closer. And it's exciting times for the city, and to have a professional sports team here to follow. So, Jay, what you got in the breakfast wrap?
Yeah, last thing I think we'll hit on today, Kerry. The Hawks aren't in playoff contention, so after 22 seasons, Vince Carter has called it a career. Dude, 8-time All-Star, 2-time All-NBA, that famous dunk contest over. The guy is a human highlight reel, but not only was he a great athlete, the guy scored 25,700. What's the number? 25,728 career points.
That seems like a lot.
That's a lot of points, man. He's one of those players that I have a Vince Carter jersey in a box in the house. You know, like he was one of those players. That was, I guess we were in high school around that time that, you know, so the late 90s, early 2000s when he's really coming into all of his form and becoming a household name. And, you know, he'll be missed. He stuck around the NBA for a couple more seasons and was a veteran presence on the bench and a leader, and would come in at the end of games and dunk on people every now and then. Just remind, oh, I'm still here, guys. But yeah, there was one stat, Kerry, because he did play over a 22 season career. Vince Carter played at least one game against 37% of all players that have ever appeared in an NBA game. Just a cool stat, you know.
That is unbelievable.
And you don't do that because you're a scrub. He's a Hall of Famer. He's you know, by all accounts, a great guy, really good ball player, and he'll be missed by the NBA and fans. But did you have any Vince Carter thoughts?
I mean, yeah, he was just must watch. You know, that dunk contest. I mean, that's why like it almost like there's almost no point in even having the dunk contest anymore.
Yeah.
It will never top that Vince Carter dunk contest.
It was like 20 years ago.
Yeah. There's no topping it. But that stat is just mind-boggling. That over a third of players that have ever played in the NBA have played one game against Vince Carter.
Man, that's awesome. I love nerdy stats like that. That's great stuff.
But I think like you said, it just goes to show like just how much of a mainstay the guy was. You know, What's interesting with him is like you know, did you ever feel like there was a time where he was the best player in the league? I don't know if you could ever nail him down to say like, you know, Vince Carter's the best player in the NBA because he played across so many eras, dealing, you know, with Kobe Bryant to LeBron and on and on. Like you never had him in that top spot.
No,
but for so long he was in that.
Yeah, he's a
upper
superstar.
Echelon.
Absolutely, yeah. He was a superstar. He played like a superstar for 13 or 14 seasons. He was All NBA 8 times, man. I'm sorry, he was an All-Star 8 times. I think he was All NBA twice. But still, like that speaks to what you're saying. Like I think he's a Hall of Fame player, but he was never in that best player in the league discussion. Right. I don't think. But you know, still of his time, one of the best players of his time, I think.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, man, I think that's about all we got for today. Good show.
Yeah, man.
Hit on a lot. Yeah, I know we can little Friday edition here. We'll get this up and everybody enjoy this over the weekend, and you know, we'll see next. What do we have? We had Independence Day next weekend, don't we? We have a little 4th of July.
Yeah.
Bacon and eggs. Maybe we'll see. I don't know if we're gonna be going anywhere given the virus, so might as well record a show, right?
Was gonna say, don't be going out to. Well, I guess you can go buy fireworks, but
yeah, just shoot them off in the garage or in the backyard or something like that.
Yeah, the out here in Buda, they said that they're going to do 2 different shows, and they're looking into buying fireworks that can be seen from much farther away, I should say, to discourage people from feeling like they have to drive to go see the fireworks. So that'll be interesting to see how that works out. It's like, hey, you can just go sit on your front porch or your driveway or whatever and stare that way and watch the fireworks.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea instead of having everybody get together, you know. But people are gonna do it anyway. But just wear a mask.
Yeah, be safe, guys.
All right. Well, Jay, it's been good. Yeah, let's do it again next week.
We will, man. Take care.
All right, man. Thanks everybody.
ATX represent. Fatal, baby. All in 06 on a Saturday. Can the drip and swing down?